My name is Kendall, and the day my brother fired me, something inside me didn't break. It sharpened. He sat behind our father's desk, wearing a suit I helped him pick out, using words I taught him, and told me I was no longer a cultural fit for the organization I built from the ground up while he was getting drunk at fraternity parties. That was the moment I stopped being the loyal sister and became something far more dangerous. Someone with nothing left to lose. Have you ever watched someone steal your life and smile while doing it? Let me back up. My brother Marcus and I grew up in a house where success wasn't hoped for. It was expected. Our father built a mid-sized logistics company from nothing, turning a single delivery truck into a fleet of 200 vehicles across 5 states. He was brilliant, ruthless, and exhausted. By the time I was 16, I was already sitting in on-board meetings, learning the business while Marcus was learning how to do keg stands. I was the eldest by 3 years. I graduated high school early, finished my business degree at 20, and came straight into the company. No gap year, no finding myself. I found myself in spreadsheets, in contract negotiations, in warehouse floors at 4 in the morning, solving problems my father didn't even know existed yet. Marcus graduated college at 24 with a C average and a major in communications. He spent a year traveling to find his purpose, which really meant burning through trust fund money in Southeast Asia. When he came back, tanned and enlightened and completely useless, my father gave him a job anyway, director of brand development, a position I suggested we create because I knew Marcus needed something that sounded important but couldn't actually damage anything critical. I loved my brother. That's the part that still cuts the deepest. I covered for him when he showed up late. I rewrote his presentations. I took him to client dinners and made him look competent. When he got engaged to Claire, a woman whose father owned a commercial real estate empire, I helped him pick the ring. I was his best man. Well, best woman. I gave a speech that made everyone cry. I thought we were a team. My father had a stroke on a Tuesday morning in March. Massive, sudden. He survived, but the man who came back wasn't the man who built an empire. He was fragile, confused, slipping in and out of clarity. The company needed leadership, and I stepped up because that's what I'd been training for my entire life. I worked 100-hour weeks, I stabilized contracts, renegotiated terms with our biggest clients, prevented a walkout from our union drivers. I held the company together with my bare hands while my mother sat by my father's bedside and Marcus. Marcus took meetings with the board of directors, meetings I wasn't invited to. Just letting them know Dad's getting the best care, he told me, keeping everyone calm. I believed him. 3 months. After the stroke, my father had a moment of clarity. My mother called a family meeting. We gathered in the hospital room, me, Marcus, Mom, and Dad's lawyer. My father looked so small in that bed, his voice weak but determined. "I've made a decision about succession," he said. My heart pounded. This was it, everything I'd worked for. "Marcus will take over as CEO." The room tilted. I actually felt the floor move beneath me. "Dad," I started. "Kendall." His voice was firmer now. "You're brilliant, but you're not." "Marcus has relationships. His father-in-law, the board trusts him. You're too aggressive, too. You make people uncomfortable." I make people uncomfortable. I make them money, but that makes them uncomfortable. Marcus looked at me with what I swear was sympathy. "We'll still work together, Ken. You're still crucial to—" "Of course," I heard myself say. "Of course. Whatever's best for the company." My mother squeezed my hand. Marcus hugged me. I smiled and said all the right things. I went home and vomited for an hour, but I showed up the next day, and the day after that, because this was still my company, still my life's work. Marcus was CEO in title, but I'd be CEO in function. We'd make it work. I was so stupid. The first change came within a week. Marcus hired a new CFO, his college roommate, whose primary qualification was that he knew how to inflate Marcus's ego. The guy lasted 3 months before I caught him cooking the books to hide Marcus's business expenses, which included a company-leased Maserati and weekly trips to Miami. When I brought evidence to Marcus, he promoted the CFO to COO and moved my office to the third floor. I was director of operations now. Not COO, not president, director. I kept my head down and kept working. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself the truth would matter eventually. Then Marcus started bringing Claire into strategy meetings. Claire, who had never worked a day in her life, who thought logistics meant planning her charity galas. She'd sit there scrolling through her phone while we discussed critical supply chain issues, then chime in with suggestions like, "Have you tried just making the trucks go faster?" I watched contracts I'd negotiated for months get tanked because Marcus wanted to shake things up. I watched him hire his fraternity brothers into senior positions, while 20-year veterans got pushed out. I watched the company my father built begin to rot from the inside. And I documented everything, every bad decision, every fired employee, every financial irregularity. Every late night I spent fixing Marcus's mistakes. I kept records like I was building a legal case because some part of me knew I would need them. The end came on a Thursday. I was in my office when Marcus's assistant, a 22-year-old who called me Miss Kendall like I was a maiden aunt, knocked on my door. "Marcus would like to see you in the executive conference room." The executive, full reinstatement, back pay, a formal apology, removal of the non-compete clause, and Marcus's resignation as CEO. I read the offer in David's office while he watched me carefully. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. I could go back. I could take my place at the company and spend the next 20 years fixing Marcus's mistakes. I could rebuild what had been broken, or I could burn it all down and start fresh. "Counteroffer," I said. "I want them to buy me out. I want my equity share converted to cash at current market valuation, full severance for every employee Marcus wrongfully terminated, and a public statement from the board acknowledging the fraudulent practices." "That's a scorched earth approach," David warned. "You'll have money, but no company." "I don't want the company anymore. It's poisoned. I want them to face what they did." David smiled. "Let's make them pay." The negotiation took 2 more months. Marcus's lawyers fought every point, but they were desperate to keep this out of trial. A trial meant public testimony, meant media coverage, meant complete destruction of the company's reputation and potentially criminal charges. They agreed to everything. The day I received the settlement check, I was sitting in my apartment, a modest one-bedroom I'd moved into after liquidating most of my possessions. The number had 8 figures, more money than I'd ever imagined having. I felt nothing. That came later, when the board released their public statement. It was buried in business section of the local paper, but it was there. An acknowledgement of management practices that fell below our ethical standards, and an announcement that Marcus Ross had resigned as CEO, effective immediately. My mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. "Kendall, please, he's your brother. This is destroying him. Claire left him, he's drinking again, and your father doesn't understand what's happening. Please call me back, please." I deleted the message. I wanted to feel guilty. I wanted to feel something. But all I felt was tired. I spent 3 months doing nothing. I traveled, but not like Marcus had. I didn't party my way through exotic locations. I sat on quiet beaches and in small cafes and learned how to be a person instead of a productivity machine. I went to therapy, a lot of therapy. "Do you regret it?" my therapist asked one day. "Destroying Marcus? Pursuing justice?" I thought about that distinction. No, but I regret that it had to happen. I regret that he didn't just see me, value me, love me enough to not betray me. You can grieve that loss and still have done the right thing. So I did. I grieved the brother I thought I had. I grieved the family that never really existed. I grieved the company I'd loved and the future I'd imagined. And then I started building something new. I used part of the settlement to start my own consulting firm. Small. At first, just me in a tiny office, helping mid-sized companies optimize their operations. But word spread fast. Turned out there were a lot of businesses being run by incompetent people who'd inherited their positions, and there were a lot of competent people being pushed out. I became known as the person who could walk into a failing company and diagnose exactly what was wrong. More importantly, I became known as someone who wouldn't sugarcoat it. Your nephew is embezzling. Your management structure is designed to protect egos, not produce results. You're going to lose everything if you don't fire your entire C-suite. People paid me absurd amounts of money to tell them the truth. Within a year, I had 15 consultants working for me. Within 2 years, I had offices in 3 cities. I built something that was mine, completely mine, and it felt like breathing for the first time in my life. 3 years after the settlement, I was invited to speak at a business conference. The topic was overcoming professional setbacks, which was a polite way of saying, "Tell us about the time your brother screwed you over and you destroyed him." I almost didn't go, but my therapist encouraged me. "You have a story that could help people. You don't have to share it, but think about whether you want to." So I went. The room was packed, 500 people, all of them looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and something that looked like hope. How many of them had been betrayed? How many had been pushed out, talked over, underestimated? I stood at that podium and I told the truth. I told them about working myself to death for a company that saw me as disposable. I told them about watching someone less qualified take credit for my work. I told them about the moment I realized that being good wasn't enough, that fairness was a myth, that sometimes the only way to win was to fight dirty. But I also told them about the other side. Revenge is exhausting, I said. Justice is expensive. Burning everything down leaves you standing in ashes. But sometimes ashes are more fertile than poisoned ground. Sometimes you have to destroy the broken thing before you can build something better. The standing ovation surprised me. But what surprised me more were the people who came up afterward, who waited in line for hours to tell me their stories. The woman whose business partner stole her client list. The man whose boss took credit for his patent. The recent graduate who'd been sexually harassed by a supervisor everyone protected. "What do I do?" they asked. "Document everything," I told them. "Find your line, know what you're willing to sacrifice, and when you're ready, fight like hell." I gave them David Chen's contact information. I gave them the names of other lawyers, of journalists who'd covered my case, of organizations that helped people file complaints and lawsuits. I gave them what I'd needed when I was sitting in that parking garage with nothing but rage and evidence. That night back in my hotel room, I finally called my mother. She answered on the first ring. "Kendall?" "Hi, Mom," she cried. I let her. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't want to know." "I know. Marcus he's not doing well. The divorce, losing the company, Mom." I kept my voice gentle but firm. "I can't be his rehabilitation project. I can't be the person who fixes him again. I'm not asking you to fix him. I miss you. Your father misses you. He has good days now, and on those days he asks about you. He's so proud of what you've built." That broke something in me. He's proud now, after everything? He knows he made a mistake. He told me. On one of his clear days, he told me he chose wrong, that he let fear make his decision. He was afraid you were too much like him, that you'd burn out the way he almost did. He thought Marcus would be gentler with the company, with himself. He didn't realize that Marcus would burn it down anyway. Yes. We talked for 2 hours. I didn't forgive everything, but I started to understand. My father had been terrified. My mother had been overwhelmed. And they'd made the easiest choice instead of the right one. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. I never spoke to Marcus again. I heard through mutual connections that he bounced between jobs, always getting fired for the same reasons. Incompetence masked by charisma eventually reveals itself. Last I heard, he was managing a car dealership in Phoenix, married to his third wife, still telling anyone who'd listen that I destroyed him out of jealousy. Maybe some people never learn. 4 years after the lawsuit settled, I was invited to give a keynote at a Women in Business conference. The organizer sent me the speaking fee offer, and I laughed out loud. It was more than I'd made in a year when I worked for my father's company. The speech I gave was different this time. I'd had time to process, to heal, to understand what had really happened. I used to think my story was about revenge, I told the audience. And maybe it was at first. But now I think it was about something else. Refusal. I refused to accept their version of events. I refused to be erased. I refused to let someone else's mediocrity define my worth. The thing about being betrayed by family is that it makes you question everything. If the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally can discard you, what does that say about your value? It took me years to understand that their failure to see my worth wasn't evidence of my worthlessness. It was evidence of their blindness. I didn't destroy my brother. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone could see it. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25, and she was crying. My sister and I started a company together, she said. She just tried to force me out. I've been thinking about just walking away, just letting her have it. I took her hands in mine. Do you have documentation? Everything. Then don't walk away. Don't let her rewrite history. Fight for what you built. She nodded, squeezing my hands. Thank you. Thank you for showing us it's possible to win. I thought about that word. Win. Had I won? Marcus lost his position, his wife, his reputation. I got my money, my vindication, my revenge. But I also lost my family, spent years in therapy, and had to rebuild my entire life from scratch. But yes, I won, because I was free. 5 years after that day in the conference room, I attended a charity gala. It was for a foundation that helped women in business litigation, something I donated to generously and anonymously. But they'd asked me to come, to put a face to the cause. I wore a dress that cost more than my first car, stood in a room full of powerful people, and felt completely at peace. A woman approached me, older, elegant, with sharp eyes and a kind smile. "Kendall Ross," she said, "I've wanted to meet you for years. Have we met?" "No, but I know your story. My daughter worked for your father's company. She was one of the people your brother forced out. She was considering suicide when your lawsuit went public." My heart stopped. Is she? She's wonderful now, thriving. She started her own business, and she tells everyone that you saved her life. Not because you gave her money or a job, but because you showed her that fighting back was possible. The woman hugged me, and I let her. That night, alone in my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony. The city stretched out below me, lights twinkling like possibilities. My phone buzzed, a message from David Chen. "Client wants to meet with you. Similar case to yours. Interested?" I smiled and typed back, "Send me the details." Because here's what I learned. Revenge isn't about destruction. Real revenge is building something so successful, so undeniable, that everyone who underestimated you has to watch you thrive. Real revenge is being so happy that their betrayal becomes just a chapter in your origin story, not the thing that defines you. Real revenge is living well, and then helping others do the same. I never reconciled with Marcus. He reached out a few times over the years, emails that started with justifications and ended with requests for money. I deleted them without responding. My father died 2 years ago. I went to the funeral. Marcus was there, older and smaller somehow, his eyes hollow. We didn't speak. My mother hugged me and whispered, "He would have been so proud of what you've built." Maybe, probably not. But it didn't matter anymore. I stood at my father's grave after everyone left and finally said the things I'd needed to say. "I forgive you for choosing wrong. I understand fear, but I won't pretend it didn't hurt." The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the cemetery. "I hope you can see what I built. I hope you know I didn't do it for revenge or to prove you wrong. I did it because I finally realized I was building for the wrong person. I needed to build for me." I left flowers on his grave, white roses his favorite, and walked back to my car, my company, my life, my peace. These days, I run a consulting firm with 200 employees across 12 cities. We specialize in helping companies navigate leadership transitions, restructuring, and yes, sometimes litigation. I've written 3 books on business ethics and management. I'm a regular speaker at conferences, universities, and boardrooms. But my favorite thing is still the one-on-one consultations. The person sitting across from me, exhausted and furious and scared, asking the same question I once asked, "What do I do?" And I tell them the truth. Document everything. Know your worth. Find people who believe you. And then fight like hell. Not because revenge is sweet, but because justice matters. Because you matter. Because the world doesn't change when good people walk away quietly. It changes when they refuse to be erased. I'm not the same person who sat in that parking garage 5 years ago. I'm harder in some ways, softer in others. I'm quicker to cut ties with people who don't value me, and slower to give trust. But I'm also more sure of myself, more confident in my worth, more at peace with the choices I've made. My name is Kendall Ross, and my brother thought firing me would be the end of my story. He was wrong. It was the beginning. And if you're reading this from a similar place, betrayed, discarded, told you're not enough, know this. Their failure to see your value is not your failure. Document everything. Find your people. Know your line. And when you're ready, show them exactly what they lost. Because the best revenge isn't destroying them. It's building something so magnificent that everyone can see what they were too blind to recognize. It's thriving so completely that your absence becomes the most expensive mistake they ever made. It's refusing to let their betrayal be the end of your story, and instead, making it the catalyst for everything you were always meant to become. They tried to write you out of the narrative, so write your own and make it a bestseller.